Council will now begin its consideration of item 2 of the agenda. I now give the floor to Ms. Rosemary DiCarlo, and I thank her. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm pleased to read a statement today on behalf of Secretary General António Guterres, who unfortunately could not make the session. 1,000 days have passed since the Russian Federation launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in brazen violation of the UN Charter and international law. 1,000 days of widespread death, destruction, and despair that continue unabated for millions of Ukrainians. 1,000 days in, this war rages on, undiminished. Deadly battles engulf more and more of eastern and southern Ukraine. Entire cities, villages, and towns have been reduced to rubble. Bakhmut, Avdiivka, Vovchansk, and Vuhledar have been virtually wiped off the map. Since February 2022, at least 12,164 civilians have been killed, including over 600 children. At least 26,871 others have been injured. And these are just the confirmed numbers. The actual death toll is likely much higher. The past several months have seen a significant increase in civilian casualties. October and November saw some of the most intense and large-scale missile and drone attacks of the war. Over the weekend, Russia launched one of its largest combined strikes, reportedly involving 120 missiles and 90 drones and targeting energy infrastructure in all Ukrainian regions, which resulted in severe damage and casualties. Last night, there were also media reports that Ukrainian forces would be given authorization to use long-range weapons supplied by partners for strikes within Russia. I want to be clear. All parties must ensure the safety and protection of civilians regardless of their location. Across Ukraine, residential areas have increasingly come under attack. The people of Kiev are again being forced to take shelter from nightly drone and missile barrages. Critical civilian and energy infrastructure in Ukraine are systematically targeted and decimated, depriving many Ukrainians of access to basic needs. At least 580 medical facilities have been damaged or destroyed, with many first responders and medical personnel killed and injured. And at least 1,358 educational facilities have been damaged or destroyed. Ukraine has now become one of the world's most heavily mined places, with almost 1/4 of its territory contaminated with mines, an area 4 times the size of Switzerland. The environmental degradation caused by the war, including from the destruction of critical infrastructure, such as the Kakhovka Dam, has resulted in long-term consequences for local ecosystems as well as Ukraine's agriculture. Millions of traumatized people are dependent on life-saving humanitarian aid. Nearly 4 million remain internally displaced, and more than 6.8 million have fled the country. And in every conflict, women are disproportionately impacted by the economic and social consequences of the war. An entire generation of children is being deprived of proper education as attacks have driven schools online or underground in shelters. Meanwhile, human rights continue to be systematically violated. Mr. President, the Black Sea remains a flashpoint. Renewed Russian attacks on civilian vessels and port infrastructure, particularly in Odessa, are once again exacerbating global food security. I am determined to continue my engagement with all concerned to support the freedom and safety of navigation in the Black Sea. Mr. President, the targeted devastation of Ukraine's energy infrastructure may make the coming winter the harshest since the start of the war. It is not difficult to imagine how daily and prolonged power cuts aggravate living conditions, acutely affecting the more than 2 million people whose homes have been damaged or destroyed and those near the front lines. The UN remains fully mobilized to support Ukraine's reconstruction and recovery efforts. This includes critical support to enhance the resilience of the country's energy infrastructure. Our immediate focus is on the winter response plan, but without required resources, the most vulnerable will lack sufficient protection. Unimpeded humanitarian access is essential to reach some 1.5 million people in regions of Ukraine occupied by the Russian Federation. Those areas remain beyond our reach. At the same time, the operating environment for humanitarian actors has become more dangerous. This year so far, at least 9 humanitarian workers have been killed in the line of duty and more than 35 injured. This is unacceptable. Despite the international community's grave concerns, the risk of nuclear incident remains all too real, as military activities continue to be reported near Europe's largest nuclear power plant in Zaporizhia and other sensitive locations in the conflict zone. The consequences of such an event would be catastrophic and should make us all shudder. It is imperative for all parties to act responsibly to ensure nuclear safety and security. Mr. President, the recent reported deployment of thousands of troops from the Democratic People's Republic of Korea to the conflict zone and their involvement in the fighting is alarming. This would add fuel to the fire, further escalating and internationalizing this explosive conflict. There is little doubt that this war at the heart of Europe is a conflict with global implications. It undermines regional stability and deepens geopolitical divisions. It must end. Reversing the current dangerous path will require concerted diplomatic efforts and political will. It is high time for a just peace in line with the UN Charter, international law, and General Assembly resolutions. We stand ready to use our good offices and to make available the tools and experience of the United Nations in full support of all meaningful efforts toward a just, lasting, and comprehensive peace. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank Ms. DiCarlo for her briefing, and I shall now make a statement in my capacity as Secretary of State for Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs of the United Kingdom. Thank you